the director, at the end of each thing. Yeah, I'm starting. All right. Good evening and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting, Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 in the city of Port Washington. Taking roll call, all members of the council are present except for Alderman Newmeyer, who is absent and excused. Please join with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Looking for a motion then to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any questions or concerns about the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we're going to move into mayor's business. Put on your seatbelt. I have a few things tonight, a bunch of proclamations and a couple of different updates and announcements. First one is we've got some scouts, some citizens, some police, some EMTs, some different things that we're going to honor tonight. So that'll be some fun work for us to do. Just wanted to report out, had a very nice meeting last week up at Harbor Campus with our seniors who live up on Walter Street and heard some good feedback from them. I will be up there, I will be going there again in a couple weeks and then this Thursday to meet with them, starting to have some conversations about visioning as we get into June here about what are the services we need to improve for seniors in the city of Port Washington. Our fastest growing population group, again, is 60 years and older in the city, and we need to make sure that we have world-class opportunities for them. Second thing is wanted to publicly thank the council for last night. We had our second ever meeting with the school district in our joint meeting, and we supported the school district's vision for strategic planning, did their fishbone, and I think we added a couple of extra ribs to their fishbone last night, and look forward to that. And then just so the public and community knows, we called for a accountability committee to work between the city council and the school board. So asking if there's any council members, we're looking for 2 council members. I had approached Alderman Pleitner to be on that, so I'm looking for another alder person if they'd like to join. The idea would be that quarterly, the council and the school board members would meet with the superintendent and the city administrator to hold each other accountable for collaboration, efficiencies, shared services, discussion of properties, et cetera. I think last night the council did a really nice job giving the input that kind of, decades old rivalries and issues between the two organizations need to stop, and we're all in a good position to start doing more for our community. So thank you again for that. And then last Friday, I was really excited. And again, thank you to the council who was able to come. We had a Main Street and Mayor breakfast, and we had the state's chief economist, John Koskinen, join us, gave us 3-credit graduate class on the current state of the economy in Wisconsin and the United States. Those slides will come for public consumption. I think one of the takeaways, and if council wants to add anything, I think one of the things that was most impressive that we heard over and over again was the fact that the state of Wisconsin, out of the 50 states, is easily in the top 10% for performance, economically, growth. We are a growing state, a net increase in people moving to the state of Wisconsin. And we got a really good lesson on why we have labor shortages in certain areas, especially in the city of Port Washington, where hospitality and restaurants is such a big deal. I thought it was fascinating when he shared that during COVID, it was the first time ever that teenagers experienced unemployment in the United States because everywhere a teenager worked was shut down for 90 days. And then as a result, teenagers and people who worked in the hospitality business chose other jobs, and they didn't go back to that. So it created a huge gap and an opening there, and we're not producing enough juniors and seniors in high school to fill those jobs. And many of the people who went into those industries shifted out and won't be coming back. So I think that, along with just the simple fact of how much money the state of Wisconsin has in its coffers and how well we are positioned as a state moving forward without great risk to anything happening. All right, I said that as fast as I could. I've got a couple more here. June 7th, the council was asked, I want to make sure the community knows, like in the past, that we will be doing a city council retreat, trying to start that meeting possibly as early as 5 if it's possible for council. If we do come at 5, I'll provide some beanies tacos for all of us so you don't have to worry about eating. And the idea would be that at that meeting, we would lay out our strategic platform for the year, create the guidance work for each of the boards, commissions, and committees so that we know in advance of the year what we're going to do, lay out any ordinances or any areas that we want to make sure that we are focusing on for the year, create a legislative platform for the city of Port Washington, and then eventually invite in Representative Brooks and Senator Strobel, who represent us, to have conversations about different ways to alleviate some of the pinch points the city of Port Washington faces. One being that we are a growing community and that as a result of our speed and growth, our revenues do not keep up with our growth. So more citizens, more safety calls, more needs, but not exactly more money to keep up with that. And there are communities that are declining in population and they maintain their revenues. So we're going to work on that. And then lay out some of the bold vision work of our strategic plan and look for some of the big key things that we want done this year. Okay, so that concludes those two things. The last few here is I just wanted to thank the city staff and employees, Bob, Rob, Susan, all of the different employees in the different groups that allowed me to come in and work with the boards, commissions, and committees on high-performing boards training. Police and fire finished theirs last week. The last one I have to get to do is the library. But otherwise, I appreciate the council's work on that, the reminders, the improvement tools, and then our new focus eventually here on customer service as we move forward. And the last three things, try not to be anyways. In June, we'll be putting out a State of the City video to the city so that people in the community can understand what's going on with the strategic plan, where we are at with different initiatives, what we do with the tax dollars, and just basically a general update over the course of the year from July to July. I'd like to make that a tradition to ensure that the community is communicated with and they know what's going on. The last thing, so Lila, if you could switch to the camera over there. This is kind of a cool thing. A young man named Ben Lauren, a seventh grader at Thomas Jefferson Middle School, sent me an email a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "Hey, Mayor, we don't have a flag." And he's like, all the cool cities have flags. And I started to think about it, right? So Chicago, you go down there, you've got the baby blue and red stars. Milwaukee now has a flag. You go around Milwaukee and they identify, 414 and the blue and white flag. And I thought, you know what, this kid might be onto something pretty cool here. So we're going to announce and we're going to put it on our Facebook page and ask people to submit potential city flags to bring back to the council here at the beginning of August. I mean, frankly, if you don't like Ben's rendering up there, we're a sunrise city and that pretty much captures it. We just have to work on some edging there on the lighthouse, and I think that's pretty cool. So we'll put that out to the community, and then we'll put out with it kind of our 4 core areas that we identified in our strategic plan as our values for the city, and ask if they can, if the general community can design a flag, and then we'll vote on it as a council and hopefully adopt that into fall and work with our local businesses, et cetera, and get out an official flag. So if that's okay with everybody, we're going to give Ben some credit here, and maybe he'll win, maybe he won't, but either way, he'll get credit for the idea. 2 other things here then, this is easy. Working with City Administrator Brown, we also would like to create 2 annual awards for the City of Port Washington and have those go out at the first of the year, each year, our first meeting in January. And that is a Citizen of the Year for Port Washington for service, commitment, innovation, et cetera. And I was going to ask a couple of council members, I'll put a form together and ask that you put into that for criteria. And then also a Civic Group of the Year recognized by the city government. When we look at all the nonprofits and the different activities they do and the different ways that they are creating more opportunities for the city of Port Washington, you cannot walk into a park in Port Washington without seeing the impact of civic groups, right? We've got Rotary Park, we've got Lions Park, we've got gifts at Cold Dock Park, we've got gifts all over the bluff. And as a city, we don't really formally recognize some of those different things that are done. So I'm asking that we'll put those criterion together, and again, we'll bring it back to the council to choose and vote. But we're also going to ask for community input, start to use social media for, hey, here are the 4 finalists as chosen by the council, and then see if people will vote on that. So any questions about the 9 things that I rattled through? Okay. Then let's have some fun. So one of the fun parts we get to do here is recognize and proclaim certain things for certain days. So Mr. Liptow, would you mind coming up to the front here? So for those of us who are lifers in Port Washington, this is an incredibly familiar face. This is Mr. Merton Liptow. He is one of two brothers, but he's our favorite brother because he stayed in Port Washington. Don't tell Wayne. But Mr. Liptow and his family have forever been active in the business community in Port Washington. Anyone until 2007 who needed a couch or carpet or support or help or design, you went to Liptow's Furniture. And prior to that, you went to the hardware store, which now you can get pasta and pizza at, which is called the Pasta Shop, what his mom and dad owned, and then him and his brother came back and worked at. So at the suggestion of Alderman Benning, today we are honoring you, Mr. Liptow, with a proclamation declaring May 21st Merton Liptow Day in the city of Port Washington. And I'm going to read the proclamation, and then Alderman Benning and I are going to give that to you. But really, at the end of the day here, when I told a couple of people that we were doing this, there's one overwhelming word that kept coming up, and that was kind. And that you were always a kind businessman, a kind person, and that you really did everything as a member of a lot of different organizations in the city of Port Washington to maintain a kindness and an empathy, which is fantastic and we're grateful for. And my wife told me to thank you for the deal we got on the baby chair for when our son was born. So this is a proclamation declaring May 21st, 2022 as Merton Liptow Day in the city of Port Washington. And whereas Merton Liptow was born on May 21st, 1932 to Merton and Betty Liptow. And as a twin, I learned he was born first, so he got his father's name, and his brother was born second, so he got his father's middle name. Whereas Merton went to Wisconsin Street School, Hill School, and graduated from Port Washington High School in 1950 after being in the band and on the debate team. And whereas upon graduating from North Central University, he returned to work at the family business, a hardware store on North Franklin Street owned by his parents. And whereas Merton and his twin brother Wayne owned and operated Liptow Furniture in Port Washington until 2007, furnishing the homes of countless people over the years. And whereas Merton was always a kind and trustworthy member of our community. And whereas Merton served this city, our county, and state by being on the Harbor Commission, the Tourism Board, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and actively serving and supporting the United Way. And whereas Merton and his wife Margaret are the current proprietors of the Shops of Port Washington. And whereas Merton has demonstrated his commitment to our community by attending and observing city council meetings for over 40 years. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Theodore Knightsky IV, declare May 21st, 2022 as Merton Liptow Day in the city of Port Washington in honor of his 90 years of kindness, service, and commitment to the United States, Port Washington, and his customers. Congratulations, Merton. Do you want to say anything? I mean, this is your chance. You sat there all these years, so now you can tell us what you think. Yeah. Enjoy May 21st. It's free coffee everywhere. All right. The second proclamation, which I'm not going to read, but is again, Port Washington is a tree city. And this year, on Arbor Day, which was April 29th, 2022, we had a proclamation and a tree planting. I also wanted to note that this week is National Peace Officers Week. It is May 15th through the end of the week. And I wanted to thank the police department. Captain Dave here is here tonight representing the Port Washington Police Department. I wanted to thank them for their service, what they do, and all the different ways in which they respond to our community, not just for safety, but to ensure stability and peace. And if you've never experienced it, I would ask that next year the Friday before National Peace Officers Week at midnight, the police department's honor guard and a musical interlude, a bagpiper plays Amazing Grace, and we have a small ceremony honoring the fallen men and women who served in the police department over the course of the year. This year, 5 officers in the state of Wisconsin gave their lives in the service of our communities. And one of the things I asked that night, and then when I met with the roll call on Sunday afternoon, was just the fact that if you don't recognize what a police officer does every single day, that you recall and have empathy for their work. A police officer in a standard 8-hour shift will experience more trauma than many of us will experience in our lifetime. Responding to a call, we saw last week Officer Erickson, or 2 weeks ago, with the Heimlich maneuver, saving someone's life. And then he gets right back in the car and he's got to go run radar. And then after that, he might respond to an elderly person who's fallen and is in significant pain and wait for an ambulance. And then after that might respond to a domestic dispute call. And after that might respond to a juvenile who's making poor decisions. And they do all that in a day. And it's just something I hope that we don't take for granted, and that we are empathetic for. Each time you see a police officer parked or in motion, know that they're working hard for us to keep peace and keep us safe. So thank you, Captain Dave and everyone for that. Okay. So last 3 here, let's get into some Eagle Scouts. So if you Scouts wouldn't mind coming up here, and if your Scout leaders want to come up as well. I've asked our council's Eagle Scout to present these to you tonight, so I'm going to read these real quick. Mr. Hill, thank you for making sure that we knew about this. And gentlemen, we appreciate the fact that we were invited to see you cross and get your different pieces, and it's very impressive what you had done. So Sam couldn't be here tonight, but you're all part of the pack I was in, 3855, so that's fantastic, older Port Washington pack. Mr. Gasper, what pack were you in?
Well, I started out in pack as a Cub Scout. As a Cub Scout, started out in 3837, which is still in existence as the Kiwanis' pack that we sponsor. Moved on to 3838, and then as a Boy Scout, crossed over into Troop 38 or Troop 837.
Favorite camp? Gardner Dam.
Gardner
It's got to
Dam.
be Gardner Dam.
Yeah.
You guys? Gardner Dam. Yeah. Everything you do there, you can't tell anybody. Yeah, that's the best part about Scout Camp. All right, so Sam Lindstroth, we'll get this to him, but very proud. Sam's Eagle Scout project was he created a Gaga ball pit up at St. John's the 23rd, which is his alumni. If you don't know what Gaga ball is, it's a very cool game. It's basically, I think it's a pentagon, right, or a hexagon, and 2-foot-high walls. Balls go flying around inside there, and you're trying to protect the walls from those pieces. And then the other two, Nolan and Keegan Sisdale. Did I say that correctly? And Hill's very easy to pronounce. So Keegan, we really are grateful for your project. Keegan constructed a safety equipment storage system for Port Washington High School for equipment, predominantly for the football team, correct? So we're grateful for that. And that contribution to our school district, but countless generations of our football players. And then Nolan, same with you. We really appreciate for what you did for the city of Port Washington, constructing a portable life jacket drying and storage rack for Pirates Hollow Water Park. So we're very grateful for those two things. So on behalf of that, we proclaim for you the honor of being in the permanent record in the city of Port Washington for generations. Someday one of your kids will be able to Google their dad's name or their uncle's name, and boom, it'll pull up in the minutes for your recognition as an Eagle Scout. So we're going to give these to you in a second, but what I'd like you to do is tell us which was the patch that you're most proud of earning on your way to becoming an Eagle Scout.
The patch I liked the most was probably not the most difficult, but the most fun. Shooting guns, it's the shotgun merit badge, and you get to practice safe protocols with a gun, learn how to clean the gun, and then end up shooting a certain amount to achieve that badge.
Excellent. How about you, Nolan?
I would probably have to say either wood carving or archery, because wood carving you had to make your own slide, which I use on regular meetings, and for archery you have to you fire a bow and arrow, you have to make your own arrows and get a certain score to complete the merit badge.
Wow. That's pretty, pretty, you had to make your own arrows. That's pretty cool. I just go to Cabela's.
Would you walk around or?
You can jump over it.
When I was younger.
Okay, and one more proclamation. If you didn't know, this week is also EMS Service Week. So it's EMS Service Week, the 15th through the 21st. I'll be going over Thursday when EMS has practice to present them with the proclamation. But again, the city of Port Washington is pretty blessed to be served by a volunteer fire department as well as full-time EMS staff. And that's an area of gap. So if you can see any firefighters or EMS service personnel, please make sure to reinforce and thank them for their service to our community. Okay, I am done. Any questions for staff or on the staff reports from council? Okay, appreciate that. And then we're going to move into public comments. So your comments are always welcome. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you need more time, make sure to just contact myself or Administrator Brown, and we can put it onto the Common Council agenda or address you directly. Any public comments? Awesome. If you could step to the podium, make sure to sign in up there and clearly state your name and address and turn the mic on, that'd be great.
Susan Collins, Sierra. I live at Harbor Lights Condos. This is only my second council meeting, and I just want to, I don't know who to tell things to, so I'll come here and say them, and then hopefully it gets to the right people. I would just like to see a little bit more attention paid to the area right in front of Rotary Park, specifically where the sign is, where the fish are. The landscaping there needs to be redone, and when you walk around the corner, this is the building where the bathrooms are. There's this huge, ugly, dead bush that's been dead for the 2 years I've lived here. And it needs somebody to get in there and get it out and then replant it. And also the flags, when you go into Rotary Park, they last about a year, and then they're all torn and tattered. And the rest of the park looks really good. It's just, I've asked people who's in charge of this part, and I don't know. I've asked Yvonne, who does all the landscaping. Just a suggestion.
Thank you for that. We can definitely get a note to Mr. Crane tomorrow. Other public comments? Other public comments? Okay. With that, we're going to move into agenda item number 7, Finance and Licensing Committee, consideration and possible action for AAE Consulting Group to provide property insurance appraisal services. Mr. Brown, are you on the line?
Yes, sir.
So our staff recommendation then is to approve an agreement with AAE Consulting Group to complete property appraisal services on 62 buildings and structures and 59 locations in the city. It's all yours, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize that you guys have to see me 3 times. That can't be fun. So as the city starts to become a little bit more strategic about how we're approaching replacing and maintaining assets, one of the things we're going through right now is the process of inventorying all city assets. And we've done that so far with contractor equipment and also with vehicles. One of the things that we're working on right now is property in the open. And then another piece is before you this evening, and that is having AAE Consulting Group come in and do an appraisal for 62 structures at 59 different locations. and then also help us with valuing the property in the open as well. The total cost for this is $19,740. And if we started next week, AAE could be done in around mid-August, which would be helpful as far as budgeting, because then we would be at a point probably where we'd have a lot of the inventory complete, so we could consider possibly 10 years out how the replacement schedule looks. Also, I think it's helpful with regard to property insurance. Right now, we have not had an appraisal done in quite some time, if ever. So I don't know in what respect, if the city is under or overinsured. And I think this allows us and helps us get to a place where we can insure up to full replacement value. The other thing I noted in the memo was that staff is considering whether or not to have the update for this appraisal done at the same time as property market evaluation is done as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Mr. Benning?
And I would just move that we approve staff's recommendation.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll take the second.
Second by Alderman Plaitner. Any questions or concerns on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Tony, Mr. Brown, I just wanted to point out we're very grateful for this. I think this is fantastic because it will create for us for the first time the ability to have a capital improvement plan and see what our values and liabilities are. And also, just for community, Mr. Brown is joining us via Zoom tonight because we're following some protocols. Okay, 7A2, consideration and possible action on purchasing Minnesota-Wisconsin playground play equipment for Columbia Park. The Columbia Park play equipment needs to be replaced due to safety and to provide a play structure that allows for kids 3 to 12. The recommendation is to approve the purchase of the Minnesota-Wisconsin playground play equipment for Columbia Park. Kylie's not here. Tony, are you going to take this, or Jonathan, you're going to take it?
That's
All right,
fine.
go ahead.
Yep, we discussed it, Park and Rec Board, we discussed it, Finance and License earlier. So again, as the mayor mentioned, this is identified in the capital improvement plan for 2022 to spend approximately $75,000 to remove some of the unsafe play structures and replace them with new ones. We'll be getting new swings, a new GT splash structure, as well as an infinity bowl, which if you reference your council packet, you'll see what an infinity bowl is. This was approved by the Finance and License Committee. Construction will begin in fall and be ready for next season. If those of you that are curious, we also will be replacing the basketball courts and hoops and nets. That has been approved already at an earlier time, but this is just to approve the new play structures and swing sets at Columbia Park. So the recommendation from Finance and License was to approve.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I will move to approve.
Second. Approve. Is there a second? Any questions or concerns? Mr. Sigwart?
Yeah, what is the surface underneath that monster, John?
Will be wood chips.
Really?
Yeah, there are wood chips there now. We're just going to be replacing them.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any other questions or concerns? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? I was hoping this would pass, but my only concern is that the survival of the fittest swing sets at Columbia Park, which for years had 10 or 12-foot chains on them, yeah, those will be missed. If anyone wants to join me after council to see who can get the highest, I'll be up there. All right, next agenda item, Traffic Safety Committee. Should the City Council approve Ordinance 2022-7 modifying the responsibilities and meeting schedule for Traffic Safety Committee under Municipal Code Section 2.12.190. This is a first reading only. Who's taking this one?
I'll take it.
All right, Alderwoman Postel.
I actually requested these changes be made to the ordinance after witnessing Rob and staff spend an enormous amount of time reaching out to each member of the Traffic Safety Committee to find out who's available and when. It didn't make any sense. So in order to be a little bit more efficient, I requested to have a traffic safety meeting scheduled every other month, the fourth Monday at 10 a.m. If there are not any agenda items, we simply cancel the meeting. This way, everybody can anticipate that this meeting will occur and staff does not have to take extra time following up on all of the committee members. Secondly, some of the time is spent discussing simple things like whether or not a stop sign should be installed at a certain intersection. Those duties should remain with the city engineer using the traffic standards instead of being debated. So that in itself puts those details off to staff, and it works to elevate the purpose of the Traffic Safety Committee. So that's the reason for these requested changes.
Any questions or clarifications?
Yeah,
Alderman
I
Plater?
mean, highly laud Alderwoman Postle for setting this up and codifying this. I mean, the 10 a.m. makes it kind of difficult for those of us with working lives. So I guess I would encourage us to make sure we maintain a virtual presence for this meeting, and again, highly publicize it for those of us that can't make it, and encourage citizens to still reach out to their aldermen, to city staff if there are comments or minutes to be read into the public comments section of the meeting.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah, I as well would applaud it, and I appreciate the cadence of the meetings so that as we're following through in the strategic plan, downtown plan, city strategic plan, we know that the traffic safety piece, as well as when citizens call with complaints, that now we can say fourth Monday, 10 a.m. Any other questions? Again, it's a first reading, so there is no action. All right, that takes us to item 8, Plan Commission, a public hearing to consider an overlay plan development, OPD, zoning overlay for an approximately 5-acre parcel located at the northwest corner of Maritime Drive and South Park Street to allow for a proposed multi-building industrial park business condominium. At this point, I'm going to call this hearing open. Notice is hereby given to the city that this is a public hearing tonight, and I'm looking for speakers in favor. Are there any community members, speakers in favor? Would anyone like to speak in favor? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone who'd like to speak against? Is there anyone who'd like to speak against? Mr. Poole, am I doing okay with my timing there? All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak against? All right, hearing none, I'm going to close out this hearing, and we're going to move into the next agenda item, which is consideration and possible action on the application for an overlay plan development, rezoning of vacant land at northwest corner of Maritime Drive and South Park Street, I-2 Industrial Park, Maritime Sheds LLC. Owner Scott Brettel is the applicant. Mr. Harris, you're going to take this over. The issue is that the council is being asked to approve this OPD overlay at the request of the applicant, and the staff recommendation is to deny the ODP application for the following reasons. The proposal does not meet the spirit and intent or the basis for approval in the I-2 Industrial Park District for an overlay plan development, and therefore does not justify the use of the requested overlay plan development, per Mr. Harris. You're up, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I'm just going to just briefly present the item, and then from there, I'll just simply hand it over to the applicant team to give you their presentation on the application. And so this is the applicants, they're requesting to apply a overlay plan development, OPD, district over a 5-acre parcel. It's located at the northwest corner of South Park Street and Maritime Drive in the Port Washington Industrial Park. And the purpose for the OPD would be to allow for the construction of 23 building units between 3,000 and 5,500 square feet in sizes for varying uses and businesses. Each unit it would be a condominium type of development. Each unit would be individually owned, and property would be platted via a condo plat. This item, it first appeared before the Plan Commission at its January of 22 meeting. The Plan Commission did recommend to deny the OPD application. And then most recently, it was at its April 22 meeting, and a motion to approve the OPD. did not pass due to a lack of a seconded motion. And so that is the item before you, and from there, I'll just simply hand it over to the application team.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just to introduce myself, I'm James Danaher. I'm an attorney that's representing the applicant Maritime Sheds LLC. With me is Scott Brettel, who is the member who's managing this project and owns the property and can certainly fill in any specifics as to the type of buildings and the type of layout. Hopefully you have in your packets today the application, and what I would point you to as part of that application is the site plan that is attached to that application that shows what this will look like. Staff has correctly pointed out the procedural posture. This application in front of you is probably the third iteration of an application that my client presented to city staff. There's been back and forth with respect to how it should be presented to the Plan Commission, and it's been amended several times. So this most recent one was filed with the with city staff in February of this year. It was amended at the request and with the direction of city staff, and in fact, city staff is the one that advised my client to apply for the Planned Development Overlay, the OPD district. We received, after this most recent application, letter from the city attorney and staff indicating issues they had with the application. At the Plan Commission meeting, we went in great detail back and forth as to the application and why we were looking for the Planned Development Overlay. I don't want to necessarily go through all of that discussion again, but certainly will answer any questions. The main concerns in the letter from the city attorney and staff, and concerns that were expressed to my client, were concerns as to use. How is this property going to be used? What types of industrial businesses and concerns will go on at the property? And I don't know how to say it any other way. We expressed to the Plan Commission that all of the uses they will comply with the I-1 and the I-2 industrial district. So the uses that my client has identified in a report that we presented to the Plan Commission and to the staff include all of uses that are permitted in the I-1, I-2 district. They have identified, my clients identified numerous uses, including industrial, fabrication, all kinds of manufacturing, assembly, general warehousing, if allowed, again, under the statute, medical industry warehousing. There's been some interest from marine repair facility, a recreational facility, which would require a conditional grant. So all of the use questions that were raised at the Plan Commission level, that's not what we're looking for from you right now tonight. What we're looking right now is for you to review the site plan and review the overlay. What we're looking for, and the main question that the city staff presented to us is, we didn't explain in the application why we needed the overlay. And I tried to express the rest of the Plan Commission that it's pretty simple. We're looking for multiple buildings on one lot. We're looking to maximize the usable square footage on this lot. That's not allowed under the current zoning. We need the overlay district to allow this industrial, commercial, condominium use to go forward. If we had to do the standard customary division of lots, we would result with smaller buildings, less square footage, maybe only 4 buildings allowed on the property. So that's the reason for the overlay. We're looking to add 87,000 square feet, multiple buildings, flexible building structures. The demising walls can be moved to adjust to a larger use or a smaller use. We're looking at up to 10 buildings if there were no demising walls between them, or up to 23 buildings, depending on what the buyers and the owners would want out of their facility. So when you look at the overlay, and that's what we're asking for, and your ordinance indicates that an overlay is permitted, and it looks to the unified and planned development of a site in single or corporate ownership at the time of development, which this would be. It may be permitted in an OPD, Planned Development Overlay District, without the customary division into individual lots. So that's what is permitted under your ordinance, and that's exactly what we're looking for. That's exactly what the site plan that you're looking at right now identifies. we're looking to add more buildings to this lot than we normally would be able to. And the reason for that, and I can let Mr. Brettel explain that to you, is the market is calling for this. If you look at the value of the project, and some of that is in our submissions, but we're looking at a $6 to $8 million value just for the shells. It doesn't include any of the improvements on the inside. This could present 20 plus new businesses to the city, brings employees, brings commerce. Certainly it would increase on a conservative level the tax base of the city by $150,000, and that again is just based on the $6 to $8 million conservative cost as to the shells of the buildings. There's immediate interest. My client has indicated that he's been contacted just based on this concept, contacted by numerous businesses that are industrial use. The construction would be immediate upon approval. It's fully funded. To the extent the funding would exceed the $6 to $8 million, they have a standby lender ready to swoop in and help them with this development. All of these buildings would be individually owned. They attract top investors, startup businesses, established businesses that want their own building. It's consistent with the current standards of the industrial park. As you drive through your industrial park, you can see the next page shows a rendering of what these might look like. So it's consistent with the current standards in your industrial park right now. So the council, under your ordinance, is to look at certain things when you're considering approval of an OPD and what the basis of your approval is, and that's found in 20.21050. And so you're supposed to, and it says you shall give consideration and satisfy as to the following. And the ordinance indicates that the proponents of the OPD have demonstrated they intend to start construction within a reasonable period of time. Mr. Brettel has indicated to the Plan Commission, and will certainly indicate to you if you wanted to inquire, that they are ready to start construction almost immediately upon approval. The project should appear economically sound, which it does. Adequate financing is there. They have the money to commence and complete construction. That it's going to be carried out according to a reasonable construction schedule. Indicated that as quickly as they can find buyers and interest, they would commence construction. You're also to look at whether the proposed development is consistent in all respects to the spirit and intent of the ordinance and is in conformity with the general plans and community development. I think it is completely within the spirit of the ordinance, because by its design itself, it cries out for an overlay district. With respect to the uses, and we can get into the uses if you have any questions, all uses will and must comply with I-1 and I-2. Specifically with respect to industrial developments, your ordinance asks you to consider that the operational character, physical plan arrangements, and architectural design of the buildings will be compatible with, the surrounding area. They indicate none of their buildings will be rented out. These will be owner occupied. The rendering of the buildings as indicated in the application, obviously they're subject to review by your building inspector, and it's obviously up to the building code, but they are consistent with the other buildings, the design and type of buildings in the industrial park presently. You're supposed to look at whether there's adequate provisions for off-street parking, and whether it's adequately served by the roads. Again, the key to this overlay, if you look at the site plan, is the specific parking that's allowed by every single building, right? Rather than having, if you had to divide this into 4 or 5 lots, you wouldn't have the ability to have the parking. You wouldn't have the access that you have now with the private drives, et cetera. So that, again, falls into your ordinance and should be considered when you're looking at this. And then it looks to whether or not it will negatively affect the total or positively affect the total transportation in the area, the industrial park, in the city in general. This is not something that's going to increase any traffic through parts of the city that should be concerning to the council. The industrial park is in an area that is easily accessible. You're not driving through areas that will increase traffic congestion or anything like that. So it does fall into sort of the requirements that you look at when you're deciding whether or not, in your discretion, and it is discretionary, whether you're going to approve the overlay. So in terms of the negative impact, I don't think that there is any negative impact to the city. There certainly is no negative impact to the industrial park. The positive impact, based upon just the economics of it, I think are significant. And again, Mr. Brettel can speak to that. The other positives in terms of what it does to your community, and this idea of industrial commercial condominiums is here. They are in other areas. Port Washington could be a leader in establishing this type of use and this type of overlay in the industrial park. The idea that you can have one huge manufacturing facility or industrial facility and easily fit that is difficult. These smaller buildings that can be adjusted to be larger, it can be up to 11,000 square feet in one of the buildings. That's more attractive to startup businesses. It's more attractive to smaller businesses that are in the industrial type uses. With respect to uses, I know that there's a concern that this would be a mini storage. We told the Plan Commission, Mr. Brettel will tell you, I can tell the council that this is not mini storage. This will not be rented out as storage sheds. That is not the intent here whatsoever. I'll say it again, all of the uses will be compatible with the industrial I-2 and I-1 zoning. I don't have anything else to say. Certainly I can answer any questions with respect to our submissions and our application. But, you know, I think what happened at the Plan Commission meeting is staff was thinking about potential anticipated uses that were not at all considered by my client or articulated by my client that could happen. And there is no evidence that any of that is going to happen. And so we can all think of uses in any district, any building, any commercial area that may be incompatible and wouldn't be allowed under the zoning, and those can be stopped. Your code allows that. So in this case, that's not what we're asking for. We're just asking for this site plan, which would not be allowed under the current zoning based upon the number of buildings on the site, to maximize the square footage and usable square footage in your industrial park. So I don't have anything else. Mr. Brettel, do you want to add anything?
I'll just answer any questions.
Okay. Yeah, if you have any other questions, any concerns, certainly and again, at the Plan Commission meeting, there was a motion to approve this, and it kind of sat silent, and I appreciate sometimes when staff is recommending against something for various reasons, it's difficult, but the one movement that the Plan Commission was to approve this overlay district, and I would ask you, it's in your discretion. Sometimes the Plan Commission, I assume, gives you recommendations that you might go against. In this one, although we did not get to the second and the voice vote, I think that that you can be leaders in terms of this idea of industrial commercial condominiums and approve this overlay district.
Thank you, Mr. Danaher. Mr. Eberhard, did you want to make some comments on that before we have questions from council?
I would, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Brettel, by your council's representation, did you want to address?
No, he said he was going to answer questions.
I see. Okay, then thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your council packet, and for those of you who might have been at the Plan Commission meeting in April, some of what I'm about to share with you might be repetitive, but I'm going to take a little different approach with you this evening as well. The things I want to touch on, because I sense that this is of concern to one or more alderpersons here tonight, points of law, has to do first with precedent. I understand that one or more of you may be concerned that precedent somehow limits what you're able to do in response to this application tonight. And I want to assure you that properly understood, precedent does not hem you in terms of your decision-making. I understand that some may be concerned that there was some precedent set because of the other, what I call scattered uses within the I-2 industrial park, and that somehow that would serve to require you to approve this as well. And in precedent in the second sense, and I know that the applicant in their submittals, of which there have been 4 of them since December 20th to date, not 1, 2, 3, 4, pursuant to which the proposed uses have sort of metamorphosized to what you have before you this evening. But that the business barns that exist further north along Park Street, and I'm not sure who the exact property owner is, but I know that Mr. Suddendorf was the moving force behind getting those built. And so about precedent, I want to share with you some law, the risk of boring you. Precedent refers to one decision serving as binding authority for decisions in subsequent cases. But I would hasten to add that precedent, properly understood, involves the application of identical or similar facts or law. And that's not the case here. The other scattered uses in the industrial park predate this Common Council's legislative actions, first of which was taken in May of 2021, whereby this body adopted a definition of warehousing which expressly excludes storage and mini storage spaces. And more recently, in January of this year, the same Common Council, these are your ordinances, adopted an 11,000 square foot minimum for general warehousing in the I-2 industrial district. And so you see the Common Council tonight would be called upon to apply its different and newer ordinances to this proposed project than those other scattered or sundry uses that perhaps you're aware of and that the applicant has cited in his submittal. And the facts are different here too. And this brings me to what I'll call the Suddendorf business barns. Because frankly, I can understand where one or more of you might say, well, we approved it then. Why wouldn't we approve it here? And again, I suggest to you that that situation can be distinguished on its facts from this one. And so precedent does not hold sway or ought not hold sway over your decision-making tonight. With regard to those business barns farther north along Park Street, the land there was rezoned from I-2 to I-1 to accommodate the placement of the planned number of self-storage units. This is because the I-2 zoning setback would have been 25 feet. The I-1 required setback would have been 10 feet. But with the benefit of overlay plan development zoning being granted, Mr. Suddendorf was allowed to build those business barns with a 0-foot setback. The overlay plan development in the case of the other business barns was in response to the need to create a 80-foot right-of-way for South Park Street as part of the redevelopment site. And I would hasten to add that the Suddendorf property was a former contaminated oil company business site. A Brownsfield site, to be exact, which immediately distinguishes this applicant's site, which is pristine, sort of ready-to-build vacant land in our I-2 industrial park. As well, in the case of the Suddendorf business barns, a portion of the property, that same parcel was lying and is lying east of Park Street, and that was zoned I-1. So the rezoning the portion west of Park Street from I-2 to I-1 really created a matched, unified zoning for that entire property. And so, based on those facts alone, I would encourage you to understand that approval of the OPD zoning for that Suddendorf parcel would not serve as precedent either legally or factually for the decision that you are called upon to make this evening. Attorney Danaher did point out, and I would echo the fact that your approval tonight is discretionary, and that these 23 proposed mixed-use buildings are not permitted by right. The council decision has to be based on the law, the facts, and your judgment, not your will. I would add further that the intent, the general statement of intent for parcels in the I-2 Industrial Park District is that they're intended for manufacturing or industrial operations. There is no I-3 zoning district, so this district, the I-2, houses the largest scale manufacturing and industrial operations within our city. And I submit that and I think the city planner has sort of corroborated this point, that the I-2 Industrial Zoning District does not contemplate 23 storage sheds together on a single 5.37 acre parcel, which I would also add, based on the applicant's submittals, 21 of the 23 buildings do not meet the 11,000 square foot minimum area requirement for warehouse operations. And even if those 21 were combined with the adjoining building by eliminating the dividing walls, as counsel for the developer suggests might occur or could occur, the fact is that this council has no ability to require that sort of merger or combination of spaces. And even if the Common Council were to determine that these diverse uses of these 23 modest-sized proposed shed/buildings somehow meet the intent of the I-2 Industrial District, the reality is there is just no effective way, notwithstanding Attorney Danaher's representation, that the code allows you to enforce, uses that are not approved. The fact is that there's just no effective way to know what uses are actually occurring within these buildings. And finally, and most importantly, as the city planner has indicated in his report and recommendation, I don't believe the applicant, as a matter of law, has shown why the overlay plan development rezoning is necessary, not desired or helpful, but necessary to facilitate development on this site without the customary division into individual lots. For example, this is about a 200,000 square foot lot, Bob, 5 acres, 43,000 square feet per acre. Just on the face of it, there could be created 5 40,000 square foot lots, each with an 11,000 or larger square foot industrial or manufacturing building, and the zoning code standards and requirements would be met without an overlay plan development treatment. The applicant has the burden of demonstrating the need for such zoning, and I submit, based on what I have seen and heard to date, they have not established that. Thank you.
Council?
Is there any, could I just respond briefly?
Yeah, briefly.
Yeah. Again, the main thrust seems to be some anticipated future prospective use warehousing. At this point, there is no use that we're asking for and that would violate your ordinances. There just aren't. If there was an 11,000 square foot building that is there, that could be a warehousing building. It would have to comply with all of the other uses. I don't know anything about the other parcel, but I can tell you if you look at our site plan, all of the setbacks comply. There's no right-of-way issue. There's no contamination issue. This could be 10 buildings, or it could be a maximum of 23 buildings. They are not sheds. These aren't mini storage sheds, even though the statement keeps coming from the city attorney. He cited the spirit of the industrial park, the I-1 and I-2 zoning. I-2 zoning is manufacturing. We've talked about uses that would be manufacturing and fabricating. Also, why we need the overlay. You can't have this many buildings. If we divided it into 5 lots or 4 lots, you would be violating the maximum square footage per lot to get 87,000 square feet in there. You can't do it. You can't have it divided into 4 or 5 lots and put buildings in there that are going to maximize the square footage, like 87,000 square feet of industrial use in the city. So that's another reason it would not comply. We'd be here asking for overlay on each one of those individual lots to violate the 40% maximum capacity. Right now, it's 37% is absolutely maximizing all of the square footage area under the current I-2 zoning. We're asking for the overlay to have the multiple buildings on one lot. I have nothing else.
The defense rests. Is that? All right. Council, questions for either Mr. Brettel, Mr. Danaher, or our council? Mr. Sigwart.
Yes, this will become a industrial condominium, maybe a commercial industrial condominium, correct?
Correct.
Is that similar, Scott, that when you achieve like 80% sold, that there'll be an association then formed?
Yes.
Okay. And that association then would be responsible for exterior maintenance?
Yes.
Pavement maintenance, landscaping, everything outside the shell.
Correct.
So the term condominium ownership would be similar to a residential condominium. in that the owner owns the inside. Correct. Right? Is there an example anywhere near here where this has been going on? I mean, personally, I like the idea. I like the idea that this could be a little bit of an incubator, call it what you'd like. So after they got their business started, they could move to Saukville. I joke on that only because we don't have a lot of industrial land available. That's what I would call prime. We have some land, but it's not really prime land. Okay? So the idea here is to create a condominium that would allow up to 23 businesses to begin operation. And if they outgrow their site, they'd be looking for other land.
You would run into that with any business.
Right. And then the owner would then have the responsibility of selling the property as a condominium. Right? Okay, the difference that I see between this development and all the many residential developments where I proposed OPD is that it's usually a give and take. I'll give you an example. My daughter bought the second house in a subdivision in the town of Windsor, and they had this grandiose plan that had this huge park area in the center. There's probably 200 to 400 homes in this subdivision. And as they got closer to filling the subdivision, they came in and petitioned to do an OPD that would allow multifamily buildings within that parkland. And it had to be a give and take, in my opinion, at that time, where the township would have to gain something from losing the parkland. And what they ended up doing was they compromised and saved some land, and the developer developed the facility for use by the township and the village. So it was a two-way street. At this stage, I see that you're asking for 87,000 square feet, which doesn't fit if you apply the zoning. So what are you giving back to us, Scott? In other words, I look at this as a back and forth deal, all right? Thank you.
What are we giving back to you? We're taking a
Mr.
lot-
Brettel, could you step to the microphone, please? Thank you.
We are taking a lot that is taxed at $3,300 a year, and we're turning it into something that's going to be taxed at $100,000 to $150,000 a year. It's also a place where more jobs can be created, more employment to the city. So there's a number of things that we're giving back.
Other questions from council? Mr. Benning?
Yeah, I've done a little research on this one. I think the industrial park was, as I understand it, platted out originally in the 70s, and then this area was in the 90s. But since then, it's sat vacant. And, I don't believe there's been any other interest in doing anything in there other than a self-storage, which didn't follow through, if I recall right, Bob, with K&H.
No, we have not had interest in this particular parcel.
I guess the other thing that I'm looking at here, and I know the LLC name has the word sheds in it, and that's gotten a certain connotation, and that's why I hate labels and names and things like that. This team has come back to us after I think they had guidance from you, Bob, from the Planning Commission, that this is not storage, it's manufacturing. I took a look at what's out there in that industrial park, and 2/3 of it out there is not what I consider industrial, which is manufacturing from raw materials some widget, or assembling something together. So I'm looking for an opportunity to do something in there on this 5 acres of land. I understand the precedent thing and all that, but at this point, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the OPD.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion, but I'd like to continue some discussion on this. As a general rule, I don't like to see OPDs, right? We have a zoning for a reason, and I think we're finally at a position in the city where we have a mature comprehensive plan and mature zoning. And so that's why I hate to see it come before us as an OPD, lacking the flexibility to be working with some developers that would come to us with projects such as this. And so while I can appreciate the precedents, what I also perhaps don't appreciate is that we don't have a definition for a business condominium, right? That was mentioned at the Plan Commission. We brought this term up, business condominium, right? And that certainly, the way that it's been presented to us is that this would fall under that classification. Doing a little bit of research about business condominiums, certainly to meet that definition and have that be helpful for developers to come in here and be a bit flexible with us while still, meeting and following our comprehensive plan. So I guess I second the motion, but it's a tough decision to swallow for an OPD in a position in a location like this in the business park. So that's what I've got.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Gasper? Oh, Mr. Tierney?
This, I think, is a relatively quick one, and Scott, I don't, you want to answer, or Bob might actually have the answer. You mentioned the condominium association. Would they have to, obviously, some of these buildings, if they are approved, would eventually change hands. Would the condominium association, in your mind, have the power? Would it be set up so that it would have the power to say, this doesn't meet, the person that wants to buy this, his use doesn't meet our standards?
Yeah, there would be. I mean, there would be condominium rules, and there's always the city zoning.
Okay.
I guess my question would be, what could you fit on here if this was zoned I-1 instead of I-2 without the OPD? Ignoring that it's not in the spirit of what I-1 says it's for.
I'd have to look at the code section and the chart.
I guess in other words, you don't have a contingency plan if that was set up a different way. So that would.
Yeah. So I'm another one, the alderman, who really doesn't like the OPDs and would rather avoid using it. And if it would work under I-1, I think that would be better. Otherwise, I know we're working towards rewriting our entire zoning code coming up, and that you want to do this today, obviously. But I wonder if we'd be better off for a case like this, actually creating an I-3 district that would be more in tune with this, allowing higher densities, again, closer to what we currently allow under I-1 in order to supplement or to allow that in lieu of I-2. Although I'd be fine with completely blowing away I-2 and allowing, to have a little more than 60%, or have less than 60% of the parcel, which has to remain green space currently, which seems kind of a bad use of land.
And I wish I could answer your question. I just look at your chart and it just says industrial park. It doesn't have any. Existing industrial doesn't have any requirements, so I don't know if the staff knows more, but yeah, it is what it is. Yeah.
Other questions? Otherwise, we have a motion and a second. I guess, Mr. Sigwart?
Pat and I were talking about future uses and sales. Is there any way that this document that the condominium would operate under could be reviewed by the city? Because I think it's a 2/3 majority vote, you can change all your rules of your condominium. Am I making a point, Scott, that makes sense to you? In other words, how do we prevent the condominium association from just changing their rule? I mean, we like their rules, but now they change them all.
Well, the zoning code would supersede.
Scott, thank you, sorry.
The zoning code would supersede any condominium rules that we would set up. So no matter whatever went into the buildings, firsthand, secondhand, would have to meet the zoning code.
Can we have the city review it and approve
Oh, definitely we can work with the city on the condominium documents.
That was a good answer, Scott. Just, I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense now that I think about it. We have an overruling control with the actual underlying zoning. The OPD doesn't change the underlying zoning. It just allows it.
So before I call for a vote, I think it's important. I'd like to give context to why the Planning Council was crickets. In conversations, I mean, basically it boiled down to the Planning Commission was struggling with the dilemma of supporting staff and then supporting the development. And I think one of the compelling things that came around was when you look up just at the screen right now and you see that in our industrial park, we manufacture, we wax boats, we make cupcakes, we have a miniature golf course. And the component that came up was KMC Stamping owned this property forever, did nothing with it, sold it with the intent that no manufacturing would go next door. And I think that's, kind of the context. And as the conditions have continued to change, this is a really good example of why we have to be strategic as a city. And this is not casting blame anyone backwards, but moving forward. Mr. Harris wasn't here when that miniature golf course and laser tag place went into an industrial park, but it is what it is. And moving forward to the point tonight where we have limited space to develop industrial, hopefully on the north side of the town as we've annexed part of the town of Port Washington north of the interstate. I was quiet because I was sitting there trying to figure out what is the best use of this. Bob just pointed out, and you answered my final question, there has been no one who has inquired on that property. So some development is better than no development. And while I have no vote, I think that it's important that we take the opportunity while we have it to put in development there and make sure that there is a condo agreement, because I like that piece as well, Mr. Sigwart, that we have some say in what that looks like so that it just can't all of a sudden be voted on by 66%. So, any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, there is a motion on the floor to approve the ODP. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I make a footnote to this?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me the opportunity. Just as a footnote to the council, this will come back before you in the form of an ordinance because it is a rezoning. And so you'll have another opportunity to look at that language close up. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move into Board of Public Works consideration and possible action on grant agreement with the Fund for Lake Michigan for planning and engineering activities. With that, the issue is should the city execute an agreement with the Fund for Lake Michigan for planning agreement with Valley Creek. Staff recommends that the city execute an agreement with the Fund for Lake Michigan for planning and engineering grant in Valley Creek. Mr. Brown, were you going to represent this one?
Yep, I certainly can, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So earlier this year in January, the city in partnership with Stantec and LNRP worked together to submit a proposal to the Fund for Lake Michigan for planning and engineering in Valley Creek. The city ultimately was awarded the $150,000 grant for those two phases, the planning and the engineering. So this item and the next one, the companion piece to this being they work with Stantec for them to do the engineering work, is what is before you this evening. So again, the scope of work that's contained within both pieces here, the proposal to the Fund for Lake Michigan and also Stantec, is to focus on stream bank stabilization, asset protection, and improving the ecology and human access, and then also increasing capacity to convey runoff in extreme storm events. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. The one thing I would say is this is a credit to Rob and the relationships he's built up with Stantec and also LNRP. This and a number of other grants that are in the queue and are likely to be approved are a result of the work that he's done. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Tony. Any questions?
I would move to approve.
Got a motion to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Sigwart. Any questions or concerns about the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, the next is consideration and possible action on the proposal from Stantec to perform planning and engineering services in the Valley Creek watershed in accordance with the requirements of the Fund for Lake Michigan. The recommendation is to approve the proposal from Stantec to provide planning and engineering services. This is a sister document to the previous action. Mr. Brown, did you want to add anything?
The only thing I would add, Mr. Mayor, is that the total cost for the work that Stantec would undertake is $149,740, which is within the $150,000 grant. So this is really a service that is provided, and it is not costing the taxpayers any money.
Everybody likes that statement. Any questions or concerns? Otherwise, I'd be looking for a motion to approve. Moved by Alderman Terry, moved and seconded. Any questions or concerns on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Excellent. Motion passes. Thank you for this work. Please make sure Rob knows the Valley Creek watershed. I'm not sure that everyone in the community knows where Valley Creek is, but it is not the same as Sauk Creek. And this is very, very important for the city of Port Washington. All right, next one is a fun one, a second reading of a consequence of our growing community. Council is being asked to consider the approval of the creation of an additional voting ward, Ward 8 in the 4th Aldermanic District. The recommendation from the city clerk is to create the Ward 8 in the 4th Aldermanic District for the municipal code. This is the second reading, so it is an actionable item. Susan or Mrs. Westerbeek, anything to add?
As we had discussed at the last meeting, this came about due to the annexation of property from the town of Grafton into the city of Port Washington last year. That was the Kenneth Dahmer property Newman Development purchased. And in doing so, this brought another supervisory district for the county into the city, which we had not previously had, along with an assembly and senate district. In doing so, that requires us to create a ward to be able to take those new districts within our jurisdiction. So in compliance with that, along with the state requirements and Wisconsin Election Commission, I'm asking that the council consider this for approval. This would in fact assign a new ward, Ward 8, for that area. And it would be placed within the 4th Aldermanic District. It is the property is abutting that current district now. And that would also be assigned to the Grand Avenue United Methodist Church polling location. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Benning?
I would just move to approve ordinance 2022-6, creating Ward 8 in the 4th Aldermanic District and amending 1.0300A of the municipal code relating to Aldermanic districts.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderman Postle. So the motion on the floor is to approve the ordinance with the amendment. Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, let's go on to some new business. Consideration and possible action on a developer's agreement for Hidden Hills North subdivision from Belinsky Homes. The staff recommends approval of the developer's agreement with Belinsky Homes Incorporated for the development of Hidden Hills North residential subdivision. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Belinsky Homes would like to develop a residential subdivision on approximately 25 acres. The subdivision would consist of 30 single-family lots, along with 7 duplex buildings for a total of 14 condo units. And then separately, there is an estate lot as well. The first 2 phases, which I was just told today by John Donovan that they'd like to start on June 22nd, would be the single family phase and then the condo phase, and then the estate lot phase would start sometime in the future. Just to hit on a couple of high notes here, the landscaping will be done by the city, so we will plant all the trees, and then the developer will reimburse the city for the cost of doing that. Another item to note is that in the 2020 city audit, one of the findings and recommendations by the auditor was to have the developer provide a basically costing of all the assets that they're dedicating to the city. So we've added language in the developer's agreement to include that. Another piece to note here is that the developer has the ability to start what's called an early start permit period, where they're able to build up to 8 spec homes. And the last thing I would just say is that this has been kind of in the makings for a number of years. So it's definitely exciting to see that this is moving forward.
Any questions or concerns? Mr. Sigwart.
Tony, I am of the understanding that these are the street trees only that the city will be planting?
Correct.
Okay. And then how about, and I say this relatively sincerely, how about the maintenance of those trees until they're established? Will that be the city's responsibility or the developers? And don't say the homeowners, because they won't do it.
The city's responsibility, I guess I would say. And we figured in the cost for that too, as far as the watering.
That's good. Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns about the developers agreement?
Tony, a quick question. Traffic, construction traffic, is that going to be allowed to come to the south through the current subdivision, or is that all going to be pushed to Green Bay Avenue to the north?
We haven't even had a discussion about that yet. That would be something that was discussed at the pre-con meeting.
Okay.
I would like to heavily insist upon that because of the homeowners that are there. So John Donovan didn't indicate that they would begin building from Green Bay coming south then. That's where all the fill currently is, Tony, that they would be moving, certainly. So I would certainly hope so. But he didn't indicate one way or the other?
No, he did not.
Okay.
And that's something I can certainly follow up with him on as we get closer to that pre-con meeting.
If there are questions from homeowners about construction, is there another point of contact at Belinsky Homes other than John Donovan that I or city staff can reach out to about construction?
I can't say that I'm sure right now, but I can certainly follow up and determine who that would be if there is such a person.
Yes, please. And I know you and I have talked about this, but hours of construction, when that would occur, and give notice to homeowners when that would begin, certainly.
Okay.
I know that we've also talked about park dedication fees in the past, and when exactly do you know that we would be in receipt of that money? Some homeowners, now that we know that there are park impact fees that developers will pay to the city, that there's money there for park improvements, et cetera, with new homes coming into the Hidden Hills neighborhood, when we would be in receipt of that park impact money?
I'd have to double check the DA, but I believe it's when building permits are pulled.
It probably isn't. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Go ahead.
No, I would cede the floor.
Mr. Gasper?
The agreement mentions that the developer is going to construct sidewalk on both sides of all streets that are to be constructed as part of the subdivision. What about the south side of Green Bay Road?
The south side of Green Bay Road was not considered.
Okay, because at some point that's going to be a city street and we're going to construct sidewalk on it. But under current practice, we would not special assess for it. So I would suggest that either that money gets set aside as part of this, or that the homeowners association have to be responsible for paying for it at such time that that sidewalk is constructed.
Are you making an amendment, or are you going to make a motion with that amendment?
Sure.
I mean, is that appropriate, council?
The amendment would be in order.
Okay.
Sure. I will move approval with the change that sidewalk on the south side of Green Bay Road is to be either the responsibility of the homeowners association at such time that the city is to want to add sidewalk there, or that money needs to be put aside as in an escrow account, I guess would be the right way of doing it, for the city to construct that sidewalk at a future date.
So before I entertain a second, just a clarification, can you make a motion with two contingencies like that? Or should it be one or the other?
I think he could address both simultaneously.
Okay. Because I mean, the liability, I heard two liabilities in there. We're either going to have it to the builder or to the homeowners association. So
Yeah, I'd rather go to the builder, but I would accept to the homeowners association.
can we, I'm wondering like,
So the premise of the motion is to make the approval of the DA subject to those payments.
Yeah.
Sidewalks.
R-
You're
Right.
suggesting two alternative means to accomplish that.
I'm trying to make sure that, 15 years from now, when we put in sidewalk there, there's not a fight over how we're paying for it.
Yeah.
It might be sooner than that, too. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, is Mr. Brown still with us? I presume so.
Yep.
I'm always a little reluctant from a legal perspective to interject things that didn't come up at the bargaining table. So I don't know, Tony, if you think that the matter is best put over and that issue addressed specifically? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't. I mean, if it's the desire of the council to hold the item for us to have a discussion with Belinsky about this topic, we can certainly do that. But I don't have any indication one way or another how they would view such an amendment.
and the reason I asked for clarification is I think, I in the spirit of what Alderman Gasper is asking, like if the motion were to set up a fund that were then escrowed for future use, there's a weird, is that calculated on current square foot cost to do concrete? Like, I think we'd have to be specific.
Right.
So that's why I asked for the motion. So, I mean, if Tony, if we want to, just because they want to start moving on June 22nd, we won't be back in session again until early June. That would mess up their whole schedule. So I guess my question is, if we were to just ask for a set amount to be negotiated, Tony, by you and council on an escrow dollar amount, because Mike, because I get it, or Mr. Gasper, I get it, but where does that sidewalk start and finish on this plat map we're looking at and those different pieces?
I would assume all the property adjacent to Green Bay Road that is part of this. So that wouldn't include Lot 1 of CSM 2353, because that's not part of this, but it would include the rest of the boundary that is on the right-of-way line of Green Bay Road.
So with that spirit, what would you recommend, council? Because I'm 100% behind the developer being liable for those sidewalks instead of the homeowners 25 years from now, because Deb Postel and I will continue to run to ensure that the city doesn't have to pay for that.
Yeah. My best advice is to postpone the matter and let it be brought up to the developer, and in 2 weeks we can, the council can act on that. I know that historically, when this development agreement at the inception, and then more recently when it was fine-tuned, the developer had definite views on sidewalks and costs, and this is just a variation on that. So my sense and recommendation to the council is to postpone the matter till the next meeting.
And just as another point of clarification, if we were to act upon it with the idea that there would be an escrow created for future liabilities, with a contingency in the motion that if it's not amenable to Belinsky, that it be brought back, can we do that too, or just move it down the road?
Well, that's an alternative. The difficulty I see with that, Mayor, is that there are some variables that haven't been fleshed out.
Sure.
How much money, who's holding the escrow? Is it an interest-bearing escrow? What triggers a payment from escrow? Who determines when maintenance is needed? These are all sort of sub-issues within the larger issue. My advice is to lay it over until the next meeting, reluctantly, but I think that would be the most efficient means.
Okay, in that case, I'd like to withdraw my previous motion and instead table this item until the June 7th meeting with direction to city staff to negotiate with the developer on a funding mechanism for sidewalk along the right-of-way line of Green Bay Road which being the north limit of this project.
Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. The motion is to table this and ask the city representatives to go negotiate back with the spirit of the developer paying for sidewalks or escrolling dollars for the sidewalks. There's a motion and a second. Are there questions or clarification on that motion? All right. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That motion unanimously passes.
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify one thing I said incorrectly before?
Sure.
So Alderman Pleitner, you had asked about when park fees would be due by the developer. In the development agreement, it says that developer shall pay the park fees set forth herein at such time as requested by the city, but no earlier than 1 year after the date of execution of this agreement.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay. Anything else on that topic? Moved, seconded, and going. Tony, none of us would be, as we're leaving here with the second public comments, none of us would be offended if CC or Will or anybody popped on screen there with you. And then second, as we move into this, are there any public comments or appearances as we close out the meeting? Any public comments or appearances? Okay, with that, then I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Move. There's a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Go Pirates.
Oh, come on.